Welcome to History Happy Hour. I'm your host, Jess Edberg, Executive Director of the Dorothy Molter Museum, and I'm here to educate, inspire, and entertain you with a pint-sized historical tale related to Ely area history in about the time it takes to drink a pint of ale. If you are new, the history I share is not a deep dive, rather it scratches the surface using publicly accessible resources. History Happy Hour is supported in kind by all of these wonderful supporters, and it would not happen without them. Additionally, if you know someone who may like this programming, all programs are available online via YouTube under Dorothy Molter Museum's channel or as a podcast on your favorite platforms, along with a playlist. Why is film such a touchstone of our lives? Since its inception, cinema and its filmmaking processes have played a significant role in society. Operating as a dynamic two-way street, film both reflects society and molds it. Acting as a powerful mirror, film puts a spotlight on society's values, beliefs, and issues at the time, as well as shifts occurring within existing cultural norms. Concurrently, viewers are molded through social awareness, political and ideological influence, identity and representation, cultural preservation, artistic expression and education, as well as emotions such as empathy, outrage, profound sorrow, and understanding. Cinema both preserves history and actively shapes the next generation as life is edited and reframed in real time, placing a measure of responsibility on the filmmakers to capture events, narratives, and perspectives with honesty and integrity. Cinema as a visual medium transcends communication barriers and creates a universal experience. How did this start? Well, in the 1880s, two major events happened. First, in 1877, the invention of celluloid film made recording practical by replacing heavy glass plates with flexible and strong continuous film reels. And second, in 1878, motion was captured for the first time with Muybridge's sequential photos of a horse that proved all four hooves leave the ground while galloping. With these two events, Thomas Edison and William Dixon developed a method to project these images by creating the kinetograph and kinetoscope in 1891. Projection offered access to see moving pictures and led to public viewings in 1894. The kinetograph was a motion picture camera designed to capture a series of photographs of moving objects onto celluloid film for viewing on a kinetoscope, which was designed for individual viewing rather than projection. Users viewed short, continuous loops of celluloid film through a peephole, creating an illusion of motion using a magnifying lens, light source, and rapid revolving shutter. Not dissimilar to creating a flip book with drawings of slightly different images that you flip really quickly. In 1892, French inventor Léon Bouilly invented and patented the cinematograph, an early motion picture film mechanism named after the Greek word for writing in movement. Sadly, this invention did not make Bouilly rich, nor was he independently wealthy, so he lost his patent rights, and in 1895, the French Lumiere brothers adopted the name and applied the cinematograph technology to a device that was most of their own invention. Louis and Auguste Lumiere created a motion picture camera superior to Thomas Edison's kinetograph, which did not have a projector. Their work hoped to correct the flaws they perceived in the kinetograph and the kinetoscope to develop a two-in-one machine with both sharper images and better illumination. The Lumiere brothers held the first public projected film screening in Paris, featuring everyday scenes like workers leaving the Lumiere factory. This new stage and film became a popular attraction around the world and among all classes of society, from showings at fairs and vaudeville houses to sophisticated theaters and halls. France seemed to be ahead of the curve in filmmaking, as just a few years later, Georges Méliès, known as the father of special effects, revolutionized early cinema by shifting from simple documentaries to imaginative theatrical narratives. He popularized techniques like stop motion, substitution splices, double exposure, and hand tinted color. And using his skills as a professional magician, which I bet was much more lucrative back then, Méliès invented techniques to create illusion on screen, such as making objects appear or disappear, dissolving scenes, and using multiple exposures to show scenes within scenes. His most notable film was A Trip to the Moon in 1902. He's also credited with transforming the film industry from a novelty into a medium for storytelling, influencing future filmmakers. At the same time, another guy here in the States was discovering and developing the idea of narrative editing and continuity in films to enhance the storytelling. Edwin S. Porter pioneered continuity editing, cross-cutting, and the use of the shot as a basic unit of film structure rather than the scene. These techniques replaced the long, boring scenes with cuts back and forth between different actors, scenes, and storylines, making the film experience more engaging for audiences. His most notable film credits are The Life of an American Fireman in 1902 and The Great Train Robbery of 1903. Enter Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, the defining comedic geniuses of the silent film era, often viewed as rivals with contrasting styles, but known to have great respect for each other's work. Chaplin, known for The Tramp, used sentimentality and graceful movements to achieve emotional depth, while Keaton's, quote, great stone face persona focused on complex stunts, mechanical gags, and modern, technically precise filmmaking. Speaking of, did you know there is a Denver Silent Film Festival April 10th through the 12th, 2026? In the 1920s, Latvian Sergei Eisenstein added another layer of nuance in filmmaking and directing when he theorized that film meaning is created through editing to provoke emotional and intellectual responses. Eisenstein's 5 methods in his editing, metric, rhythmic, tonal, overtonal, and intellectual, transformed cinema by allowing filmmakers to convey abstract concepts through juxtaposition. His technique heavily influenced filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock, Steven Spielberg, and Martin Scorsese. The arrival of talkies, or films where the actors are heard speaking at volume, revolutionized the industry and ushered in Hollywood's golden age. The industry also saw the world's first drive-in theater on June 6, 1933, in Pennsauken Township, New Jersey, featuring a 40 by 50-foot screen, capacity for 400 cars, and advertised with the slogan, "The whole family is welcome, regardless of how noisy the children are." These technological and creative filmmaking advancements were quickly capitalized on, and by the 1930s, the Big Five studios had adapted to dominate the film industry, creating the studio system, film noir, color film, and iconic stars. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, more familiar as MGM Studios, became known for immense glamour, high production values, and having, quote, more stars than there are in heaven, by contracting a number of well-known actors, including Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo, Lon Chaney, Buster Keaton, Clark Gable, Jean Harlow, and Spencer Keaton. Although MGM was the last studio to convert to sound, they released one of the most iconic and color films of the 1930s, The Wizard of Oz, in 1939. Paramount Pictures was renowned for comedies, European-style sophistication, and star-driven vehicles with names like Mae West, Cecil B. DeMille, Bing Crosby, Marlene Dietrich, Gary Cooper, and directors like Billy Wilder. Warner Brothers popularized sound, fast-paced, gritty gangster films, and working-class dramas like 1941's The Maltese Falcon and 1942's Casablanca, and actors like John Barrymore, the dog Rin Tin Tin, and contract players like James Cagney, Bette Davis, and Humphrey Bogart. 20th Century Fox specialized in lavish musicals, Shirley Temple movies, and strong westerns. Early successful films often featured stars like Tyrone Power, Betty Grable, Marilyn Monroe, and Gene Tierney. 20th Century Fox released the classic dramas The Grapes of Wrath and How Green Was My Valley, that were both directed by John Ford and featured stars Henry Fonda, Jane Darwell, John Carradine, and Maureen O'Hara. Although the smallest of the big five, RKO Radio Pictures was influential for musicals, fantasy films, and film noir. RKO, an acronym for Radio Keith Orpheum, worked with Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Katharine Hepburn, Robert Mitchum, and Cary Grant. The studio produced two of the most famous films in motion picture history, King Kong and producer, director, star Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. These five companies controlled the studio system, where actors, directors, and writers were under exclusive and restrictive contracts and operated under a factory model, producing a high volume of films, often one per week, and forcing independent theaters to buy films in bulk. However, this dominance was broken in 1948 by the Supreme Court's Paramount decision, which forced studios to sell their theater chains. These five were distinct from the quote, little three comprised of Universal Pictures, Columbia Pictures, and United Artists, which at the time lacked or had fewer theaters of their own. As broadcast technology advanced, a new competitor emerged on the film scene, the television. From the 1950s through the 1980s, cinema was forced to evolve through wider screens, social change, and digital effects. A new Hollywood emerged in the 1960s and 70s with a shift toward director-driven, edgy films that pushed the norms of what was appropriate to show on screen, like 1967's The Graduate, 1968's Rosemary's Baby, 1972's The Godfather, and 1976's Taxi Driver. It was also the birth of the blockbuster with the release of 1975's Jaws and 1977's Star Wars, the first movie I ever went to with my parents at 1 year old to the drive-in because, well, crying babies and all. Both studios that also emphasized films as a metaphor for institutional negligence, greed, and the prioritization of economic interests over human life. By the 1990s, a digital revolution with massive technological leaps was underway. It was a transformative era where computer-generated imagery, or CGI, shifted from niche experiments to a mainstream Hollywood staple with films like Jurassic Park and the first fully computer-animated feature, Toy Story. It was a turning point in realism for digital characters defined by merging 3D models with live action, early motion capture, and a distinct, often glossy aesthetic driven by limited hardware capabilities. And now, over the past 20 years, film has shifted from analog 35 millimeter to near total digital production and distribution in the mainstream. In the 2020s, streaming platforms like YouTube, Netflix, and Disney Plus redefined how movies are distributed and consumed. Today, the landscape of modern filmmaking has diverged into two distinct, often conflicting ecosystems: high budget franchise content and independently produced films. While massive franchises focus on interconnected, formulaic storytelling designed for global, sustained profitability, independent films offer and often fight for original, risk taking, and director driven artistic expression. And Ely has watched this whole historic process unfold. Once mining companies planted root with company towns in northeastern Minnesota, entertainment was in high demand given the harsh working and living conditions at the turn of the last century. Entertainment was different in the towns as opposed to those who worked and lived in the bush. In a village or town, popular activities included social clubs, attending community dances, enjoying ethnic festivals, community picnics, performances at local auditoriums or opera houses, and of course, visiting local taverns. Theater performances and eventually moving pictures offered an escape into an alternative universe of beauty, artistry, and storytelling. Today, we know that performing arts act as a creative outlet that reduces anxiety, lowers the stress hormone cortisol, and boosts mood enhancing endorphins. And that engaging in theater, music, or dance fosters confidence, builds social connections to combat loneliness, and encourages mindfulness by focusing the mind on the present moment. Of course, before moving pictures, live theater was an excellent option, and most towns had an auditorium or opera house or both. The Vesi Temperance Society, formed by Finnish immigrants, was one of the very first clubs organized in Ely in June 1889 to combat the lawlessness and public drunkenness, as well as fairly strict ethnic segregation by providing alternative recreational activities. They built the building that most of us in Ely know as the bowling alley, a block north of the boathouse, in 1895 to accommodate up to 500 attendants for lectures, concerts, musicals, light opera, and band performances, and it became the town center for community entertainment. It eventually transitioned into an opera house and later a movie theater by the 1920s. In 1897, the Elko Theater opened on Chapman Street, once located where the former Heavy Metal Sports was, as a vaudeville theater, then silent films, and finally the talkies with 350 seats. It was described by Morris Borgen of Borgen's Dry Goods in what is now the Ely Folk School as looking like a palace. The Elko closed in the late 1930s and was sadly torn down in 1944. Finn Hall, also called Pink Hall, was a large frame building located at 120 West Chapman Street by at least 1895 and was originally painted red and then faded to pink. It was known as the Finnish Social Hall, but also for its association to the American Socialist Workers' Party. And another rumored reason for the name Pink Hall is due to the political ideologies that at the time were considered pink to red. Nevertheless, it was often the scene of plays, operettas, musicals, lectures, and rallies, and was the venue to host the Black Theater Troupe that visited in August of 1895 we learned about at last month's program. According to David Kess, there are reports of a bijou theater in Ely around 1908, but no evidence has verified this. Other semi-private small movie theaters operated in those early years, one of which is said to have been in the back room of Mary's Spinning Wheel. Although mining companies didn't know the physiological effect of engaging in performing arts at the time, they took advantage of both the technology of film as well as the interest in it to boost efficiency and safety, aka cost savings. Safety films were not required in the early years, but they were utilized as part of a voluntary education initiative by the U.S. Bureau of Mines. The U.S. Bureau of Mines was established in 1910 by Congress through the Organic Act under the Department of the Interior to address a surge in catastrophic coal mining disasters, which claimed over 3,000 lives in 1907 alone. Its initial focus was improving safety through research, accident prevention, and educational efforts. The Bureau of Mines produced romantic safety films, such as When a Man's a Miner in 1926, a 39-minute silent film to train miners on avoiding risks such as falling coal. The film shows Lucky Burns, a young, careless miner who disregards safety rules to increase his daily coal output and make a name for himself to find love. Lucky's leg is crushed by loose coal, which changes his stubborn head on the importance of safety, leading him to join the Safety First School. After learning proper safety techniques, Lucky saves a score of trapped men and is awarded the Joseph A. Holmes Medal for Heroism. It's truly a soap opera of the times. There's a love interest, jealousy, a street fight, dismemberment, disaster, and rescue. Aside from the award-winning performances, this film was notable for having cinematographers shoot scenes hundreds of feet below ground, a feat not previously attempted. Now, if you have become invested in Lucky's story, When a Man's a Miner, it is available on YouTube, and here is a QR code for you. So, although practical, it was clearly produced to keep the attention of the workers by connecting them to Lucky's story through the drama of his lived experience. Up here in the Northwoods, the Spruce Mine in Eveleth made its own theater to show safety films more than 200 feet underground. The brainchild of Joseph Wilson, the theater was created in an unused pump room next to Spruce Shaft Number 4 in 1925. Spruce Mine's Wilsonian Theater was mostly used for safety films, but became an opportunity to provide company workers with a bit of R&R by showing the occasional comedy film at all hours of the 24-hour workday. because happy miners meant productive miners. Here in Ely, in the mid 1920s, as the film industry was maturing, the interest in film was strong enough for a brand new movie theater to be built. In 1928, the Bear brothers out of Bemidji were preparing to break ground and construct the new Ely Theater on the 100 block of Chapman Street when the first rumblings of the Great Depression forced a delay until 1935. The $80,000 construction was completed in 1936 and resulted in a structure with a 900-seat theater, 2 retail shops, 6 apartments, 15 offices, and a mezzanine level with an enclosed crying room. Although rowdy children were quickly removed by uniformed ushers during performances. Double feature matinees were regularly shown on Wednesdays and Saturdays with a youth admission fee of 9 cents for kids 11 and under, which left 1 penny for candy. The late Stanley Kunstler recalled that miraculously every Saturday, every kid in town was 11 years old or younger. Now, during this time period, the Swanson family of Ely commissioned famous Upper Midwest architects Liebenberg and Kaplan, who were one of the Twin Cities' most successful architectural firms, best known for designing and redesigning movie theaters. The 1936 completion of the stunning Art Deco-style State Theater on Sheridan Street made it very clear that going to the movies was a main form of entertainment during the Great Depression, another challenging era of our history. Referred to as an opera house, it was intended to accommodate the popularity of motion pictures in Ely with 350 seats and, like the Ely Theater, included apartment units and office space. Plans originally named it the Rio, but final drafts changed it to the State Theater, which proudly displays on the entrance marquee. Its doors opened on Thursday, October 15th, 1936, with the movie My American Wife, starring Frances Lederer and Ann Sothern. Even as television and video changed entertainment habits and the other entertainment venues evolved or disappeared, the State Theater remained an anchor of entertainment for both Ely and the surrounding communities. The Swanson family retained management of the theater into the early 80s and was taken over by local movie enthusiast Ron Forsman. However, a theater is a big undertaking, and maintenance on a historic building can get out of hand and deferred all too often. Changing interests, local economies, and the advent of the startup called Netflix, where you could subscribe to receive movie DVDs via mail to your home, shifted the attention of moviegoers. Even with its grand and triumphant entrance in 1936 during the Great Depression, the Great Recession ended up claiming the State Theater as a victim, and it closed in 2008. The building quickly fell into disrepair, and the once grand marquee sign became a roost and a mausoleum for the city's pigeon flock. In 2014, Ally A. Realty purchased the building and began restoration efforts to return the state to its former glory, as well as bring it into the 21st century with improved lighting and sound, new seats, and a state-of-the-art HVAC system. In 2015, the theater was listed on the National Register of Historic Places for epitomizing the work of Liebenberg and Kaplan. When the construction dust settled, a second theater, the Greenstone, was established with modern lounge-style seating for 50, a concession with tasty treats and beverages for all ages, and a functional third space on the corner that theater management is now fundraising for to finish. The theater reopened in December 2019 with a twist. Instead of a film, it hosted a live theater production of The Quiltmaker's Gift, comprised of local cast and crew. The following year, the theater incorporated as a nonprofit, guided by a board of directors who worked diligently to raise funds and apply for grants to support theater operations with staffing and develop a diverse plate of the opportunities for community theater and film. Then, boom. COVID hit and shifted the theater's opening year from a celebration of diverse entertainment to scrambling to adapt to the new normal of a pandemic. With an incredible amount of perseverance and grit, the theater board pulled together the necessary required precautions and staff to safely reopen during the pandemic with its first film screening in over a decade on June 24th, 2020, featuring Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Since then, road bumps notwithstanding, the theater has flourished, and many of you may be well aware of how it looks now and the many events hosted there, including the fourth annual Ely Film Festival that just wrapped up. Did you know that the Ely Film Festival is one of the few in the nation that incorporates Indigenous filmmakers throughout the event rather than a separate block, as well as offer an entire day dedicated to Indigenous youth from the region so they can see representation reflected in every aspect of filmmaking? This festival also makes an effort to elevate filmmakers from historically marginalized communities, such as women, people of color, queer, and disabled people. It truly is an inclusive, empowering, and community building event for all. Aside from offering movies, performances, community events, and celebrations, Ely's Historic State Theater works to give back to the community by offering youth programming for those interested in learning more about the film industry. Cinema Kids is an after-school program for 4th and 5th grade students in Ely and Tower Elementary Schools. And the SAGE program is collaboration with Minnesota North College to offer hands-on experience and education in filmmaking from beginning to end. In fact, short films from each of these clubs screened at the Ely Film Festival. If you would like to support the success and sustainability of our nonprofit Ely's Historic State Theater, there are several ways to help, from becoming a sponsor or a member, a film and event attendee, renting the marquee with a special message, or also by purchasing concessions to enjoy during your film or event. You are also contributing to the theater's success. There's bound to be a good fit for you to help. There's a wonderful opportunity this weekend. The Ely Community Resources 48th Annual Art Auction at the Ely's Historic State Theater. Doors open at 4:30 for silent and live auctions and food from Boundary Waters Catering. You can kill two birds with one stone, or alternatively, feed two birds with one scone by supporting two great organizations in town this weekend. Thank you for being here. A very special thanks to Ely-Winton Historical Society, the Ely Film Festival, and Ely's Historic State Theater for assistance, and to our collaborators in making this program a success. We hope to see you next time when we'll be talking about the Ely Junior College. Until then, have a great month.